What you're saying there, Paul, is so interesting. That whole concept of, time and space, and the kids who are lost in space. And I was really fascinated to hear Steve J. Cool, I remember quite a number of years ago, who was very much into sensory integration. And, he spoke about the analogy of the shopping mall in the States or in Canada. And, you've got the big shopping mall, you've got the shopping mall map, and you've got the dot, here you are. If you don't have the here you are, how do you know where anything else is in relation to you? So for the kids who are lost in space, and the parents were so concerned, he's not looking at me or she's not looking at me. But as you said there, they don't even know where they are.
Exactly.
Or who they are.
Exactly.
So how can they find you?
Absolutely. And what very often happens when a child is not well integrated through his senses, there is this sense of being vacant, this sense that you see in the lack of eye contact, for example. What I think sound stimulation is doing by working on both the vestibular proprioceptive, on the ear of the body, and the auditory, it gives us the sense of ourselves, the sense of being present within ourselves. And now that we are present within ourselves, we can open our antenna to the world, and the world start to make sense. That is really the core, I think, of what we are doing.
Yeah. And we see that then translated, when I think about that in the clinic then, so that's translated into, now I know where I am, now I can find you across that space, so my eye contact starts to improve, but also my localization of sound. So I can start to, not only do I realize that you're there, whereas prior to that, it was all about, this was my world, this little world here, as opposed to now it's like, okay, that whole world, because my spatial awareness is improving, it opens up, so now I can find you across there. And not only can I find you from a visual point of view and interact with you or be open to interacting with you, but I can hear what you're saying and process what you're saying. So that whole vestibular, that proprioceptive vestibular, the ear of the body, the ear, it's listening is so much more than what I learned in college. That one-liner.
Absolutely. And still now, after 40 years of quote unquote promoting the word listening, people are not yet ready, I think, to see that there is such a difference. If this difference was understood, if the ear were more visible, let's say, if the ear functioning was more visible, was as visible as the functioning of the eyes, when you see the movement, where people understand when you tell them, if the movement of the eyes do not work very well, the child is going to reverse letters, etc. People have to understand that listening works very, 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 very much like the eyes. And if there is this comprehension, particularly at the level of the professional who are in the field of helping what will be the best approach for a child, finding out what is the best approach for a child and giving advice. If this notion of what I call listening was better understood, I think children would not have to go through so much hardship, which very often is going to finish up with a child who is depressed, a child who is sick at the world, a child who is a dropout, a child who is not going to do well because it is programmed in his mind that whatever he does is not well done, and that is going to ricochet and to his professional life, to his family life. We see it all the time. It's such a waste. It's so much little which could be done at the beginning. That is a message I would like to transmit. Understand that there is a notion there which is not just listen, listen if you're not here, listen. That's beyond that. In fact, when you have to say that, too often,
Yeah.
it means that the system is not working well. Work on it. You know?
And when you say to work on it then, what in your experience is the best way to work on it?
Well, I think preventively, music education is probably the best approach, particularly if you add to the music the element of movement.
Yes.
Music,
yes.
dancing, which is
Yes.
so natural with children. Okay, that is a preventive, and that could basically help a lot of children to go to the next step.
Yes.
Okay, then there is all the work on the voice and on expression of what I would call the movement of the voice, the music of the voice, which is more than just the words that we produce in order to make sentences. We produce them with a certain music.
Yes.
That's why it's so easy for a child to learn another language than for an adult, because the child is still enough plasticity in his brain to hear the music of the other language, and then it's very, very easy to put the lyrics on it. Okay, while the adults are trying to put the lyrics, but they don't have the music. Okay, and which means that get the children into drama, get the children into talking, and introduce reading. Reading as a box in which there is a wonderful story to transmit to others, which has been put there by a wonderful person who wanted to give it to the world. Open this box and boom, the story will come.
Yes.
But this is a auditory, is a listening, is a ear, auditory way of looking at reading. Make the eye part, the decoding, secondary to the talking part. And that is something we're working very, very hard at the Listening Center to reframe the experience of reading with those kids. They read without even being aware they read, because they are there to, be Harry Potter and whoever, and it just come out of their voice. And the eyes are just doing what they're supposed to do when you are a good reader.
Yes.
When you are a good reader in the beach, okay, enjoying a novel, you are not looking at letters. You are looking at a story which just comes to your mind. That is what reading is. That is what the child who cannot read doesn't experience. We tell him, okay, like A, B, A, yeah. He's never going to read that way. And even if he does, he's never going to enjoy it. And he's losing a huge universe of knowledge because he's never going to access it.
And it's so interesting what you're saying, and it's so true. Like when I work with the little ones, when you combine that rhythm and movement with the speech into things, whether it's singing and action songs, or whether it's row, row, row.
Well, when you look at the cortex, when you look at the projection of the body at the cortical level, you are seeing that the mouth, the face, is very, very close to the hand. And when the child is born and put his thumb, even before was born, already put the thumb in the mouth, this is give us a message, is that there is a neighborhood here. And one stimulates the other. It's true I'm using my hands a lot. I use my hand a lot. And I don't feel sorry about it, because my hand is my conductor. It gives me my rhythm. It makes me sing my speech without having to sing it, if you want.
But this is what I mean. I think we've lost something in society, maybe in general, because sometimes, you even hear people, I mean, I've heard people say in Ireland, maybe don't move your hands as much. But I know for me that when I move my hands when I'm talking, I can get my point across better. It gives me a better sense of timing and everything. So it's exactly as you say, that it's that body working with the speech end of things.
Exactly.
That's the important
and you are firing more of your brain, which is very significant.
Absolutely.
And it's true that while we are in an interview situation right now, the conversation is more, as we say in French, à bâton rompu, is more relaxed, is more spontaneous, and probably more interesting for the listener than when we start. Because by talking, and that's another very important notion to be understood, by talking, we are stimulating our brain. because the sound of our voice, as well as the sound of other people's voice, as well as the sound of music, has its sound. What is sound? Well, it is energy. Translate. It's electrical, bioelectrical, whatever you want, electrochemical potential that you send to the brain. Which means that the more a good speaker speaks, the better he's gonna speak. You don't need that many notes. You don't need. If you need hundreds of notes, it's because you do not really charge your brain enough with energy. Which means that the effort that it takes you to talk, to think of what you're saying, is too heavy compared with the stimulation you give yourself by producing sounds. And a good speaker is a good speaker is a good listener in the sense that he gives himself more energy than he produces for speaking. And you can generalize that not just for speaking, for learning, for some things that we call the flow. People who reach a level of flow. It's interesting, the level of flow. The flow is like reaching your maximum potential using minimum effort. Problem of children with a learning disability, problem of people that we are talking about, is that they are never reaching fully a state of flow, which means that they are always doing homework. That every 3 minutes they want to go to the fridge, or they're starting to look at the ceiling if they're on the calm side. If they are not on the calm, the introvert side, they're going to start fighting with a little brother. And every time they have to go back to the work, which means every time, if you look at a car, a car in a manual shift, they have to go back to first, second, third. They're never on the highway. They stay in the city. They consume a lot of gas. They produce a lot of pollution, but it never goes anywhere. Go on the highway. And that is what we have a beautiful system. We have a system which basically gives us energy while we need energy. I think the purpose, for me, the final purpose, the top of a therapy well done. I always say that therapy well done is bring people to self-sufficiency. Self-sufficiency for me means that you have within yourself a system which feeds you more than what you had at the beginning, which means that the more you get into something, the more you are interested in it. The more you are interested in it, the more you study it. The more you study it, the more you are expert at it. The more you are expert at it, the more it comes to you easy. Etc. The 10,000 hours rules. That is what it is. But it takes time and effort to get to that stage. To fire all the neurons, the neuroplastic aspect.
And really get that neuroplasticity, get those neurons firing up, so the person is at their best.
Exactly.
Like, there's so many points there that you've mentioned, and just going back to one, which is in terms of the whole intelligence end of things, because I see so many families, and when they come to me, they may say, or they may have had a psychological assessment done, and the psychological assessment could be quite damning, and it may say that the child has more significant issues, and the family are saying, but we don't see that to the same degree at home, but yes, at school, that's what's happening. And I just, I suppose for so many families out there, I mean, and I'm wondering, do you see the same thing? But I see so many children who come with, whether it be possibly quite a damning neurological report, and you're thinking, oh my golly, how is this child even going to be able to walk into the room or come into the room? And maybe a psycho-ed assessment equally, whereby it looks like the child has an awful lot of difficulty intellectually. But in reality, once we're looking at the pieces of the jigsaw and those foundation pieces come together and the child gets a sense of, here I am, this is who I am, and now I can connect with you and I can listen, I can process. That whole psychological or psycho-educational profile changes or has the potential to change. So it's often not that the child has a very significant learning difficulty. It's that psychology, that psychoeducational academic piece is the icing on the cake. And it's only when those underneath pieces come together from a sensory motor point of view that they lay the foundation for that to develop in the first place.
Absolutely. I think we have to be clear here. I will never say, and I say that because it has been said and it has been criticized, that sound stimulation, all this makes children more intelligent. It doesn't.
No.
It just removes the obstacle to permit them to better use their potential.
Yes.
Something which often happens to us, particularly in the last years, where we have to review a lot of, the more we move, the more children are tested and the assessment are becoming bigger. And sometimes before we see a child, in order to have the direct contact with the child when we see him the first time, we review all the assessment. We ask parents to send us all the assessment. We review all this. And when I look at this, I say, my God, what am I going to see coming today in my office?
Yeah.
That's impossible.
Yeah.
Oh, poor guy. And then what comes to me is a completely, not completely in the sense that, it's a completely different picture than what the assessment have showed me. And I want to have that direct contact with what I call the child behind all those assessments, all those diagnoses.
Yes.
That is what we want to work with. I see more potential than what is written in the assessment right from day one, even before starting the program. And when I see this potential, I know that we are going to have a good result.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay? This is not because we are making the child more clever or more intelligent. We are just removing the obstacle which prevent him to be. And we are removing some of the compensatory mechanism which makes him the way he is.
Yes, yeah. And it's looking at the child that is really there.
Yes.
The child that the family really have, as opposed to this combination of he has difficulty with this, he has difficulty with this, he has difficulty with this. But it's looking at the bigger picture, looking at the whole person that's actually there in front of you.
Yes.
Paul, you have helped so many children over the years, thousands upon thousands of children and adults really start to achieve their true potential using the sound therapy. And I know I see so many parents, and I'm using the sound therapy as well, and we just see such amazing changes. But parents often say to me, is my child going to be the only child that it doesn't work for? Or is, so what would you say in terms of who does it work for? Who does the sound therapy work for? What diagnosis or what way the children present? What do you feel?
Well, this is a big question, and I'm going to try to make it as concise as possible. Of course, it's going to work, but I have to be nuanced in what I'm saying here. It's going to work better when there is more of a gap between the potential of the child and his level of achievement, okay, when there is a bigger gap. But that is not necessarily the case in every case, in every child, okay? Because a child who has a high potential sometimes find other ways, and that are good for him, but those ways are not necessarily what the system wants him to do, which means that it's going to make him a renegade. It's going to make him someone who fights the system and he's going to use all his potential to feed this fight, and that makes it a little bit difficult. We help better children who are not structured in their difficulty. What I mean by that is that when you reach the age of, I would say, the development of personality, which is like 13, 14 years, give and take, the child is going to have to start living with his own self, with his own belief system. That's what I am. Up to now, I was not a good student. Now, school is not good for me, which means that my reaction towards school is going to be that's not for me. I'm going to find another way. And now there's so many ways kids can dream. I'm going to become a famous hockey player. I'm going to become a famous star, you know, like I'm going to become a gamer, you know, and I'm going to make millions because I'm good in gaming, which is the last one I have heard in the last couple of years. And that is very, very difficult to bring back the child to the here and now, to his reality. Which means that sometimes potential can play tricks with us. Sometimes I prefer children who have problem with the two ends of the antenna we were talking about. The auditory end of the antenna and the body end of the antenna. Why? Because it is much more difficult for them to find an escape, to find, okay, I'm good in this, I'm good in sport, that's what I'm going to be. Okay, it's better to have, it's not better, but it's easier to have a captive audience, or at least an attentive ear from a child who really doesn't have very good compensation. Okay, a very important factor in a successful outcome is the family support. The family support means the family support, mom and dad being on the same wavelengths, supporting each other, that the child doesn't go to one in order to get what he doesn't get from the other. That often happens. And if we try, and we spend a lot of time explaining to parents, one, this kind of issue of you have to you have to show a common front. Another thing that we have to explain to parents when we help a child is understanding what the change is. A change, when a child comes to us because he has a socialization issue, might not be the day after he starts the program or even the months after he starts the program just socializing better. He might go through phases of attempt of socializing, but not being good at it, being clumsy at it, and it's sometimes very frustrating for the parents. Say, you know, he was not very good in relating to others, but at least he was quiet. Now he's loud about it, which means it makes even more full of himself. So, well, that's a process. Also understanding that the process of change, I'm talking about my own experience. The first thing I asked Dr. Tomatis when I met him, after having all 18 years of bad experience I had had, the first question I asked him when he told me I can help you, I told him, is it going to change my dreams? I mean, that is basically was the first resistance. Yes, I am ready to change, but I am not perhaps ready to change everything about myself. Because I have to hold on something, which is what I know of me, even if what I know of me is not really, worth too much. It's still me. And the process of change in any therapy, particularly therapy which work, can be sometimes create a little bit of heat. It's physics, like a movement creates heat. And this heat is going to become, by a child, to become more emotional sometimes, more oppositional sometimes, more argumentative, louder, negative. No. For a child who has always been basically going with the flow, yes, no, just doing what people want, and then he starts saying no, but he doesn't yet show that he is making progress in other area. For the parent, is like, wow, what's going on here? Okay, you know, it's say, well, what I'm saying is that the no is the beginning of the yes. It means that I know what I don't want, means that perhaps one day I'm also going to know what I want, which is very much different from I don't really know what I want because I really don't care, or I'm so passive, so vacant, so absent. It doesn't matter. What I often tell parents is that we are working on process. We are working on a process which is going to improve. We are not necessarily working on content. We cannot promise you
Yeah.
that you are going to have a polite, disciplined, diplomatic young kid. But you are going to have a kid who is more present, more with it, more with you.
Yes, and more independent.
And more independent.
Yes. And that's ultimately the thing. And it's funny that you say all of this, because I would have so many parents, and when their child is going through the lift, and obviously we meet very regularly over that period, the parent might say, I'd say, so what are you seeing changing? And the parent might say, well, he's definitely cheekier. And he's definitely like talk about pushing the boundaries.
Yes,
like,
good for him.
You know, and then I say, well, could that be a good thing? Because before we started the lift, he was so passive. He was doing everything that you wanted, but he wasn't thinking about what did he want to do himself. So it's exactly as you're saying there. And I think it's fantastic from the parent's point of view that once, and that's why it's so important with any sound therapy program that a parent would do, family would do, that they have a skilled, experienced clinician to work with who understands the process, who understands what's shifting and changing and what that means in terms of skill development, but also understanding that the child who's becoming more independent is often the child who looks like they're becoming cheekier, more oppositional, more defiant.
Absolutely.
All of
that's
that.
That's the price to pay, and it has to be accepted. Otherwise, it's basically putting
shutting
back in
the
the
child
box.
down. Yeah.